think when you look at AI, that bell curve has really tightened up. And the reason for that is because so much of the landscape is just evolving at a rapid rate. The scary part was there still were people falling for it. Now it's like with AI, the bad actors can clean that up and they can make it look exceptionally realistic.
We know that every single business owner is hearing about the AI revolution, but there is a massive gap that is between buying a tool and being truly AI ready.
Don't really focus in on the what or the how. Focus in on the who. Better to get good at choosing the right partner. Then you gain the efficiencies of delegation.
Hi everyone, this is Maheen and welcome to the CanadianSME Small Business Podcast. In 2026, we know that every single business owner is hearing about the AI revolution, but there is a massive gap that is between buying a tool and being truly AI ready. And without clean data and a secure foundation, AI isn't a shortcut to growth, it's quite a fast track to a security breach. Joining us today is Rishi Patel, the co-founder and CEO of Keeran Networks, a computer prodigy who launched his firm at just 15 years old. Rishi has spent over 2 decades helping Canadian businesses weave IT security into their daily habits. Under his leadership, Keeran has become a national powerhouse recognized for 5 consecutive years as one of Canada's 15 best managed IT companies. We have lots to dive into, so without a further ado, let's welcome our guest, Rishi. Rishi, we're very pleased to have you on the show today. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having us. Love the format for Canadian SME, and thanks for having me here, Maheen.
Of course. I'm very pleased to have you with us. Now, Rishi, you've noticed that while everyone is excited about AI, most small businesses, they're skipping the essential groundwork. Tell us, what AI mistakes do SMEs make and what does true AI readiness mean?
Yeah, great question. And I think like the landscape of AI has changed so much. Like if you look historically, any technology, how long it takes to adopt. I mean, usually it follows this bell curve, right? And on the, front end, you have your pioneers. These are your trailblazers. They sort of dive in, shoot first, assess later, if you may. And then eventually you've got your early adopters. And then, the masses usually start to follow. And then you end up with these laggards. For example, it'd be like my grandmother who still believes that a rotary phone can be used in today's times. But I think when you look at AI, that bell curve has really tightened up. And the reason for that is because so much of the landscape is just evolving at a rapid rate. And I guess the situation that we're seeing is it's almost like the train is left the station and people are still trying to label it a fad, or they're still trying to say, I don't think it'll be something that will be meaningful, right?
Mm.
And I think that's probably a huge concern because you look back at, different points in history where technology has really had an impact and shaped us. For me, Keeran Networks has been around for 26 years. So I saw the transition from dial-up to high speed, right? And I remember clients saying, oh, well, I don't need internet all the time, right? Like dial-up's good enough for me, right? Then we saw, email replace the fax machine and, be a lot more than just a messaging platform. And people would say, well, I don't need it on my phone, right? Like I'll just email when I get to work, right? And so then social media comes out and it was kind of sort of the similar message that, this isn't for me, or this isn't going to be something that takes off, or I don't have to worry about it. And we see that with AI, at the end of the day, I think it's important to get in early. I think it's important to be aware of what's happening. I think it's important to be trying different things out and making sure that you're staying relevant, right?
Mhm.
That's probably the biggest um, challenge that I see. And then the second biggest challenge is just people that are exceptionally um, unsafe with IT, right? They're so excited to try things out or do things that it's essentially uh, has unfeathered access to their data or their machine or their accounts, and they don't really know what is allowed and what isn't allowed, and that part I think is very disconcerting because while I commend them for utilizing AI or trying to understand AI, on the other hand, they've done it at the risk of just completely exposing themselves, and they're not even aware of what that exposure is.
Absolutely. And it's such a reality or vital reality check, Rishi. And you can't really automate a mess, and you can certainly can build AI on top of unorganized data. So that was a really important point that you made out there. Now let's focus on how AI is reshaping cyber threats and security risks. Please tell us, how is AI changing cyber threats and how can SMEs use it effectively?
Yeah, great question. So I think it goes both ways, right? So if you look back, we all sort of started with the idea of antivirus, right? And we just knew that if we didn't install antivirus back in the day, it wasn't a question of if, it was a question of when we would get it, right? And now you fast forward it to today, the cybersecurity landscape has shifted immensely to these phishing attacks or these targeted campaigns to gain your credentials, right? And so bad actors, or that's sort of the term for hackers now. Um, you know, we can all recall like years ago they'd send out these they look like scam emails, right? So it'd be like, oh, a FedEx package is getting delivered or a Nigerian prince has some money for you. And it was really easy, I think, to just look at it and laugh and think, who's really falling for this? And the scary part was there still were people falling for it. That's why, those emails, we all saw them because there'd still be a small percentage of people that it would impact. And now it's like with AI, the bad actors can clean that up and they can make it look exceptionally realistic, right? Like now they can figure out the right time to send it. They can mimic the voice. They understand the organization. They're able to the velocity through which they can put out these campaigns, and they can understand their environment has grown immensely, right? It's like the attacks are well designed, well targeted, both in terms of prevalence, right? So if you're an organization that would have valuable information or would be in a position to pay something for that information, then they would target you. Or if it's just a really easy business or person to do some theft from, right? And so the number one thing we hear so much is, oh, that's I'm not a big deal, or that's not going to happen to me, or it hasn't happened as yet, right? And I always say to people, I don't know if that's the right thinking, right? Because if I applied that same analogy to cavities or to a fire or to locking my car, one would just say it's a matter of time until it happens if you don't have the preventatives in place. And so similarly, just like you can have all these AI enhanced attacks, you now have the opportunity to use AI to defend yourself, right? And so there's now AI tools that will automatically continuously scan your network. It'll look for anomalies. Like, even companies like Huntress, they have ITDR, so intelligence, an identity threat detection and response. So it'll look at things like, okay, well, if someone's accessing their network and their IP shows that they're in Canada, and then someone else is using those same credentials to access the network, but now they're in Belgium and it's only, minutes apart. How is this possible? Right. Or just understanding that, okay, well, in your Outlook, for example, there's a rule that, is deleting emails or it's moving key pieces of information into a thing called an RSS feed, right? Which the average person, like including myself, wouldn't even do that.
Mhm.
But if I was trying to cover my tracks, or I was in the middle of a spear phishing attack, like those are the patterns that you would see, right? And so I think that's where like AI can really make a big difference, is because organizations that may or may not be targeted, right? There's no point arguing about it, but they can definitely protect themselves by using AI enhanced cybersecurity solutions.
So when threats move at the speed of AI, our defenses have to also move from being reactive to more proactive and becoming more automated as well. Um, the next up, Rishi, let's shift our attention to why the one person IT model is no longer viable for SMEs. Please tell us, why is a mature MSP model better than a single in-house IT resource?
Yeah, I mean that's a loaded question, right? And obviously, I have some personal biases for it, but I think often people have a sense of loyalty, right? They often have an IT guy that they really like, and they're like, this guy's been with me since day one, or I really trust this person. And I think that that's probably like a misguided sense of safety and comfort, because the reality is, we know that one person can't do it all, one person doesn't know it all. And then secondly, we also know that just because there hasn't been any issues doesn't isn't an indicator that there's not going to be any issues down the road. And so, like so many important things in our life, it's important to have a third party audit, right? Just like you do, most businesses do their own bookkeeping, but then they have an external accountant to just do the whatever it is, notice to readers or audited financials. Or sometimes in complex medical situations or legal situations, you're going to try to get a second opinion. I often say to people, hey, it's important to have a second set of eyes. Just take a look at what's happening in your environment. Now, it could be that, your IT guy is the guy. He's doing everything amazing, and that's wonderful. But more often than not, that's not the case. There's things that that person's missing that they didn't know. It's not a question of being deliberate about not wanting to do it. It's more this, you don't know what you don't know. And we see it in our own business, right? Like we wouldn't allow one tech to just work on an account. It's always a team approach. And then that way you have the checks and balances that you need to make sure that nothing was missed. And it's an ever evolving process. And so for us, let's say you could support your environment with one guy, whether it's part time or full time, or two guys, or the number doesn't even matter.
Mhm.
You need to allocate an extra half body for what we like to call the three T's: the toys, the tools, and the training. Because the toys are essentially what enables you to have that innovation. The training is essentially what enables you to configure it properly. Toys, tools, and the training. I skipped one. And the tools are what enable you to be more efficient about it,
Right.
right? And so there's many different adages that we come across that I think are detrimental to some businesses. It'll be things like, well, if it's not broke, we don't need to fix it, or IT is not a priority for this year, or my IT guy will let me know what I need to do. And
Right.
if you think about your network, it can really break down into three areas. You're going to have sort of the guy who designs it, right? So we'll call that the IT solutions architect, the person who implements it. So we'll call that, the project implementation specialist, and then the person who supports it. And we'll call that the network administrator or network support technician. It's very rare that someone can wear all three hats. And even if they do that, they do it at an exceptional level. And so, if you're trying to design the systems and processes that are relevant for a business, it helps to be able to have other examples to refer to, and it helps to have the time to be able to collaborate with others to put together the best solution, right? But if you're still doing password resets, and you're also doing workstation deployments, and you're also supporting the users, and you're also attending meetings inside the organization, or you have other clients, for example, it's probably not going to get done to a very high level. It'll probably just be maybe a cookie cutter playbook, or just be whatever you know. So when we look at environments that have an IT guy, whether it's internal or external, we often say, hey, it's very rare that a team wouldn't be able to do a better job. And it's not always about the cost difference, because one would argue the value that you're missing out on is indirectly more than the cost that you might think you're saving by just having one person. And then, when we do take a deeper dive, even all things being equal, the costs are often parallel to what we've seen people spend on in-house IT. So it's not even a question of they were saving money. It's just a question of my loyalty, my blind loyalty has resulted in missed opportunity and productivity and, business opportunities.
Right. No, accountability is key, and having a whole team dedicated to your uptime is no longer a luxury. It's quite a requirement for a modern business. So thank you for making that point, Rishi. To the business owners that are watching, a security breach isn't just a technical glitch; it's a financial catastrophe. And whether it's $100 switch causing $1 million loss or a bank transfer fraud, these risks they're real. And in 2026, stop treating IT as a cost center and start treating it as an insurance policy that keeps your business alive. Now we'll take a quick break. Please don't go anywhere.
Hey, you think you know UPS? Yeah, that's us. Everybody knows that. You know what you didn't know? This. Okay, try to keep up. Ocean, us. Ground, rail, air, so us. Guess who? Us. Customs cleared, borders cleared, done. Us. You still with me? Wait for it. Boom. Us. Intelligent, automated, fulfillment. Us. Yep. Healthcare too. Digital your thing? Yeah. Well, book it, ship it, track it. You feeling me yet? Yep. That's all us. That's all UPS.
Welcome back, everyone. Now let's look at how AI Readiness 2.0 is helping businesses assess and prepare their systems. Please tell us what are the red flags or what red flags reveal weak IT posture and how do leaders take control?
Yeah, I would say it really comes down to reactive versus proactive, right? And in a reactive model, you're sort of just waiting for problems to occur, and then you're going to try to solve those problems. And two things happen. One is you never really get to the root cause of some of these issues, right? So when you look at a problem, it's easy to kind of put a band-aid on it, right? And then another problem appears and you put a band-aid on it. And then if this goes on for long enough, it kind of resembles a Jenga tower, right? Where the blocks are all like out of alignment and it's just like you're one problem away from the whole thing falling apart, right? And so we call this a random ad hoc proliferation of band-aid on band-aid solutions, right? And it can be very dangerous because organizations will be at a different point in that journey, but the end result will always be the same, is you go to fix something and four other things break, or you didn't actually fix that, or I guess in fixing it, you created a different issue, right? And so we always say it's really important to be proactive because when you're proactive, you're sort of in charge. You're able to align to best practices. You're able to gain standardization, and you're laying the foundation that's going to make it easier down the road to leverage it or to improve upon it.
Right.
And so what we found is in the, you know, old methodology of thinking, IT was a utility, right? It was an expense. And like any expense, you would say, how do I reduce this to zero, right? That's, exceptional CFO, thinking. And now we're starting to see IT probably is not an expense. It's probably not a utility. Like we need to start looking at IT strategically. And when we're proactive about it, it starts to become an investment. And then the questions that we start to ask is, how do we get more of a return, right? And now, like any great investment, you're not trying to reduce that investment to zero. You're trying to invest as much as you can into it because it's giving you the highest rate of return. And so the companies that are scaling the fastest, the quickest, and conversely making the most are the companies that are really leveraging this notion that you can drive the business forward through spending a tremendous amount on IT, which, historically would have sounded counterproductive. So I guess I would say that the 2.0 is the idea that to invert your thinking from being down here as an IT dependent leader to up here where you're an IT strategic leader, and that involves allowing your whether it's an MSP or your IT guy to sit on the same side of the table as you, right? And allow them to be part of those business leader conversations, right? And so something that we always try to do with our accounts is, we have these regular quarterly business reviews, and we say to them, look, we don't want to talk about the specifics of your IT. We don't want to talk about like the brand of your monitor or how many monitors you have, or whether we updated the latest print driver for you, which may or may not have made you upset when it didn't work. We want to talk to you about where the business is going and how it's getting there, right? What's working, what's not working. And then at that point, you can look at it holistically, right? As opposed to that anaholistic Jenga tower that I talked about. And you can make suggestions which utilize technology to drive that business forward or overcome those business obstacles or enable those business objectives. And that's really, I think, what a red flag is for us, was the business leaders that just go, I don't want to get caught up in IT, or, I have a guy who's looking after it, or, we're busy with this. And I say, man, like the companies that are utilizing technology properly have availability. They don't talk about being busy. They talk about how available they are, because everything's getting done behind the scenes, and they're focused on this half of the value pyramid, which is the strategy on how to execute those solutions.
Right. But having such a clear scorecard, as you mentioned, Rishi, it allows leaders to stop guessing and really start making strategic investments that actually stick. Finally, let's move our conversation to practical ID strategy that are shaped by real world industry roundtables. Um, Rishi, what are the three actions that SMBs can take now to improve security through 2026?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost is focused on identity, not devices, right? So often we hear people talk about, I have a firewall, or I just got the greatest, I put CrowdStrike in and I have the greatest endpoint detection remediation, or like my insurance gave me this list of things I need and I passed it. And I often say, like, compliance isn't the same as being secure, right? Compliance is kind of like the minimum requirements to satisfy someone else's needs. It doesn't necessarily mean that your business is where it should be for your benefit, right? And so I would say that the top three things is, if you focus on identity security. And what I mean by that is, make sure everyone has that two-factor authentication. Make sure your passwords are secure. Make sure that you're doing that phishing training so that you don't get duped, or that it's not that you're going to get technology letting you down. It's usually your team or your people that fail you indirectly, not deliberately, although sometimes they could. We saw this one example where a bad actor sent out an email to the entire company, and they just said, hey, if you're not happy with your compensation at this company, just click this link and we'll split the ransomware with you 50-50. And so it went out to an ex-employee, and they clicked it. And so they weren't a client of ours. They called us and they told us when this happened. But I mean, the point of the story is identity or people. Make sure you're protecting them. I'd say the second thing that we see is that companies don't take a multi-layered approach to their security, right? They often think it's like a one and done solution. And we say, there's no silver bullet out there. Like, security isn't binary. And so it's important to have, the right tool set, the right training, the right processes, the right provider. It has to be monitored. I mean, think of a fortress, right? Your business has multiple points of entry and points of weaknesses. And so, like any good fortress, have you shored up all of the security areas that you need to be protected? And I'd say lastly, sort of as a third thing is the evolution of outdated concepts. So everyone has learned about the importance of backups, right? And I always say, it's great that you backed up yesterday's data or last week's data, but how often when you need that data, was it from yesterday or last week? Like sometimes, somebody's left and they deleted key information and then you don't hire their replacement for a few months, or you're looking at your year end and you're like, hey, where did that file go? And then you realize you overwrote it or you didn't bother storing it from, 6 months ago or a year ago. And so we often say, don't think about backups as backing up information. Think about recoverability. And when you focus on recoverability, now we're talking about what's our speed through which we restore that information. How long is it going to take till we're back online? And then most importantly, what is our strategy around, archiving and how long we keep these backups and those sorts of things. So I'd say recoverability is more important than backups.
And those are some actionable, high impact steps, Rishi, that any business can take to immediately reduce their risk profile. Now, as you wrap up, what is that one piece of final advice you have for our listeners that are very overwhelmed by the complex tech?
Yeah, I think the piece of advice that I would give is don't really focus in on the what or the how. Focus in on the who. And, we see, because business owners and business leaders, they're so talented and so intelligent, and they've solved such complex issues and have such, an incredible learning, that they have this desire to like jump into the tech and really like muddle around in the weeds and try to figure things out. And I've often said, it's better to get good at choosing the right partner, because then you gain the efficiencies of delegation and you also gain the outcome of execution, right? Because we've all been there where we're like, okay, we'll let this person do this, and then they let you down and you're like, okay, that's it, I'm never letting anyone do this again. Or you end up in a situation where you want to accomplish something and, it just becomes too laborious or, too time consuming. And so you kind of abandon it, right? And with IT, you can very much lose yourself in the weeds. But ultimately, I think if you have somebody who can help you navigate it, like a Sherpa, like imagine you had to climb Mount Everest, right? And you try to do it yourself. It sounds very dangerous and not something you'd want to do. But if you think about it, every day on Mount Everest, there's like hundreds of Sherpas that go up and down this mountain. Like it's no big deal to them. And, they carry your pack, or they set up camp for you, or they just, help you with oxygen and those sorts of things. And they make it a very different experience, right? It's not to say that you couldn't climb Mount Everest by yourself, but it is to say that with a Sherpa, it's going to be a lot easier than if you tried to do it without them. And so I think that's my response is try to find your IT Sherpa for 2026.
That is such a great reminder, Rishi, that is to focus on the outcome, not just the tools. And that was a great overview and a good walkthrough with all the insights that you were able to share in such a short amount of time. So we really appreciate that. Rishi, thank you so much for being on the show with us. And it was a great reminder that it is important to focus on the outcome, not just the tools. So thank you again.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And that was Rishi Patel from Keeran Networks, a masterclass on how to guide, connect, and most importantly, protect your business in the AI era. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Please be sure to subscribe and visit our website, CanadianSME.ca, for more resources. So before we leave, a special shout out to our partners, UPS, ADP, for their ongoing commitment to empowering small businesses.